Hey, welcome back. I'm Justin.
And I'm Ray.
And this is the Hope Shot. So today we're going to hear from Ray on his story and how he found recovery. Ray is one of those guys that's kind of intimidating at first. Me and him were actually in drug court together in 2011. So that was like 10 years ago. And, now we both have the exact same clean time pretty much, a little 2 weeks apart. He just celebrated. I'm celebrating next week, which is pretty cool. So we're going to hear from Ray and see how he found recovery. And Ray?
Awesome. My name's Ray. Justin, thank you for having me do this. I'm really grateful for this opportunity. My name's Ray. I'm 29 years old. I had a pretty normal childhood, a pretty normal upbringing. My parents were married. My dad was significantly older than my mom, and when I was 6 years old, he was diagnosed with leukemia. My brother was 3, I was 6, and he was diagnosed with leukemia. He did treatment at Moffitt Cancer Center down in Tampa, and he went through bone marrow transplant, a lot of different medical procedures to try to extend his life. And he ended up losing his battle with cancer February 21st, 2001. And I was 9 years old, my brother was 6. And at that point in my life, my mom didn't cope very well with the loss of my dad. She did the best she could to try to raise me and my brother. I was always a bit of a, little rebel kid, and I didn't want to follow the rules or nothing. I had a lot of anger. My dad died. I didn't just lose my dad. I lost my dad. My mom became, she went into depression. I didn't see her leave her room for about 3 years after that. And then my uncle died, then my grandfather, then my grandmother, then my best friend's brother, and then one of my close childhood friends. Another friend, we'd watch NASCAR every Sunday. So a lot of death. By the time I was 16, I went to 16 funerals in a span of about 5 years. From the time I was 11 till I was 16. So
That's a lot of dealing and coping with death at such a young age.
Well, the coping mechanism appeared into my life in the form of alcohol when I was 11 years old. And I knew from the time I had that first drink that I was going to do that every day. I knew that I wanted to drink every day, party every day, and try new things. And alcohol led to marijuana, and from there started smoking cigarettes, chewing tobacco, pretty much every illicit drug eventually I wanted to try, from psychedelics to uppers to downers, everything. And by the time I was 14, I can't say, and I don't know, I'm not a scientist, I'm just a mechanic, but I can't say whether it's genetic, whether you become an addict or you're born an addict. I can't say whether, I like the phrase in Alcoholics Anonymous they call a spiritual malady. I had a spiritual void inside myself that as soon as I found that first substance, I wanted to use it every day. And by the time I was 14, I got my first arrest at school for intent to sell. I had a quantity of prescription medications that weren't mine that was large enough to, I got in some serious trouble as a juvenile. And even at that time, I went to my first meeting. I was 14 years old. It was called A Step in Time Saves 9. It was in 2005, and I kind of got involved a little bit where I got a sponsor and I did a little bit of fellowshipping. But at 14, I was just getting started. There was no retirement at 14. I was on my way, and I thought that's just what everybody did, from watching movies and listening to music and pop culture. Like, I just thought everybody partied all day. You know, in my early teenage years, I spent a lot of time over at my friends, and his parents were bikers, and we went to every bike week and Biketoberfest for about 5 years. And so I grew up in that environment. You know, I remember one time I was like 11, 12 years old. We were at the Plant City Strawberry Festival, which is like, it's like a fair or whatever, a carnival. And I was mouthing off to my friend's dad, and he turned around and backhanded me. And I ran to a payphone to call my mom. And
Payphone.
To a payphone to call my mom, and she hung up on me. And you know, that's when I realized that, you know, I started to learn something about respect. You know what I mean? And I started to learn. See, I always aspired to be a better individual, but by the time I got involved with drugs and using every day, addiction really just robbed my morality. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I always wanted to be a classy man,
a stand-up individual.
It just couldn't happen.
Yeah.
You know, so using through high school, the consequences were arrests, getting kicked out of sports, things like that. I couldn't play football anymore. That broke my heart. I got kicked out of my high school for drugs and fighting, and you know, by the time I turned 16, I had a girl pregnant, and we ended up having a little girl when I was 17. And you know, at that time, I was working at Sonny's Barbecue, washing dishes, selling a little bit of weed here and there, and you know, I thought I could survive in like a little trailer out in Moon Lake on a couple $100 a week. And so I dropped out of school to pursue my dishwashing career. Like, that was what I was going to do. I'm going to wash dishes at Sonny's, and I'm going to be a man and raise this kid. And it was a joke. It fell apart. I got fired from that job, you know, probably after a year or two because of my using. It didn't work out with my daughter's mom because of my using, you know. And when we split up, I went off the deep end. I don't know if anybody can relate. Like, do you have that moment where you were like kind of using successfully until your supervision got taken away?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I've had moments to where it was manageable.
Yeah.
And then because something fell apart.
Yep.
Yep.
Well, that's what happened. The gloves came off, and a very important event happened too. I turned 18. So when you start getting arrested as an adult, I don't know if you can relate, but the charges start off kind of silly, and they get more and more serious as time goes on. My first arrest, I was drunk on Clearwater Beach, and I got arrested for stealing a wheelchair from the hotel. And
little dumb stuff.
Yeah. Well, see, here's how God works, though. Here's how the blessings already was starting, and like people were already looking. See, I hated the police. I blamed everybody but myself for my problems, right? And when I got arrested for that wheelchair thing, I had substances on me that if they were found, it would have been introducing contraband to a facility. It would have been more charges. And I know those deputies found that stuff, and it never made it. It didn't make it into a report. It didn't make it to the jail. It just disappeared. Because they probably knew, like, this kid's an idiot. Maybe he'll get some fucking help. And, you know, so, again, they were looking out for me. I didn't catch any extra charges. They knew it would be petty theft and maybe just do some probation. But, you know, there's a saying in Florida, like, come on vacation, you know, stay on probation. The system's absolutely a trap. It's supposed to be a trap. You put your foot in the snare and you can't get out, because odds are you're not going to change your decisions. You're going to keep doing the same things over and over, creating my own problems.
The
So
insanity of life.
one trip on probation ended up with a violation. I got out from that violation, violated again with 6 new charges. And that's how I ended up in drug court, which is how actually you and I met back in 2011 in drug court. And, but something happened in 2011. My daughter's mom, for whatever, I had no business like raising a kid. I was 19, 20 years old, and she signed over full custody to me. And so now I'm in drug court. I owe thousands of dollars. I had a DUI, so I have no license. The vehicle I own is literally sitting on cinder blocks, and I owed a lot of money to the state. And now I have this 3-year-old just landed in my lap that I had never really spent much time caring for or bonding with or raising.
So all the money that you owe to the state, that was pretty much for all the fines and fees and all the probation and all that stuff. That's the money. Yep. Yeah. Because it costs a lot to get on probation.
At the time it seemed insurmountable. How was I going to pay all that money back? How was I going to get my license? How was I going to do this? And it just seemed like impossible to do it all. But, here's how recovery works. It starts really small. It starts with a bicycle. So I'm pedaling my bike to court, because I didn't want to ride the bus. You know what I'm saying? I was too proud to ride the bus.
Second class, bro.
Yeah, I was too proud to ride the bus, so I'm going to ride my bike. But I did. I rode my bike. And I started going to drug court, and that's where I met this one counselor. She was a young lady at the time, and she really challenged me to look at me. You know what I'm saying? She would ask me questions like, hey, if you feel you can drink successfully, why don't you just try having 2? If you have 3, you can't control yourself. And somehow, by the time I got to the store to purchase beer, which I was still underage for, by the way, by the time I got to the store to purchase beer, I was going there to get 1 double stack of Budweiser or whatever, and I left with, at a minimum, 2 4-packs of Tall Boys. I do math. I'm pretty good at math. Somehow the math got twisted on the trip there, and I always left with more than I intended to get. And I always broke the boundaries that I set. So the counselor was Janelle, and she's still to this day a very special lady to me. I have a lot of respect for her, and today I get to call her a friend.
Yeah. And
she was one of the first people that really opened my eyes to a new way of life.
She was my counselor as well, and she was like, even though I didn't get it right away, like some people, know what I mean? I was so hard-headed, and I got this kind of mentality that I couldn't get out of my own way, but she instilled a lot into me that I still use to this day.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Definitely a strong person in my recovery.
Yeah, she's a good lady.
Yeah.
She challenged me, and I took her up on that challenge. And I started going to meetings every day. And when I got 30 days, I decided to celebrate and drink. I went on a bender for a couple weeks, and I said, here I am breaking my rules again, crossing my boundary. And I ended up in the same spot by myself, alone, isolated, defeated, using. And I remember the 30 days where I was going to meetings. I was kind of happy for the first time. So, I was probably a happy child.
Yeah.
But I don't even know what that was like. Since I was 9, my dad died. I had no idea what that was like. It was me against the world, take no prisoners sort of attitude. And, for that 30 days, I had just a little taste. And so I decided to come back. And to get clean again.
You know, it's one thing is like when we talk about boundaries, we also got to set boundaries with ourselves and with other people in order to make recovery work. Because we're our worst enemy.
We can definitely be our worst enemy. And you know what? I learned back then that, you know, just getting clean is not enough for me. You know, just getting clean and being a doormat, or not standing up for myself, or treating people badly, that's not okay. You know, being clean, you know, that the moral standards that we mentioned earlier in the video, those have to be upheld. You know, those absolutely have to be upheld. And when I had decided to really give recovery a shot, I decided to go to school and to learn a trade, and spent 2 years going to a local school, learning to turn wrenches. All the while I was back washing dishes, this time at Panera Bread. That was humbling too, because there was a lot of personalities that, you know, just weren't really my cup of tea. And I had to learn to work with these people and to get along. And you know what, damn it, they were good people. Like, they're regular people, and they were good people. And you know, it's so funny, my first trainer at Panera Bread was in recovery too. He still is to this day.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, Matt. I don't know if you know him. By the time I left, there were 6 of us in recovery working there. So it's you know, helping each other out, lifting each other up. And the funniest thing happened. From going to work in school, and the lawyer got paid off, I got my license back, put tires on my vehicle, fixed the broken windows.
Wasn't on cinder blocks anymore?
It wasn't on cinder blocks anymore. I got this stuff called insurance. You know, I don't think I had ever had insurance at that point. And I started paying off probation, and I started learning that the courts, although it is a trap, don't get me wrong, it's absolutely a trap. I stopped being the person who could get trapped and started being an individual in recovery. And they had me work for it, but they really went out of their way to clear the path for me to grow and to get out of the system and to graduate drug court and to start my life. And I'm really grateful for that early experience. You know, I went on, and I'm a retread as well. I went on to stay clean for a few years, and I did have a relapse, and you know, I allowed resentments to take me out. And you know, today I have tools against that, which is basically just praying for the individual. Now there's tools for. At the time, I probably heard it a million times and just ignored it, and I relapsed, and I learned something. You know, that I cared very much about my recovery. I absolutely was, when I did that to myself, I was absolutely just furious with myself that I threw away all that time. I didn't throw away what I learned, but I threw away the time. And so when I came back and started the process over, I said I'm going to do some things different. So I started stepping up my game a little bit as far as recovery goes. I started, you know, taking more of the suggestions. You know, getting involved.
The suggestions sometimes we don't want to hear. It just depends on the messenger, but sometimes those messengers can be the best thing that we need.
It's usually the dude that absolutely annoys you the most, where you're like, damn, some bitch is right. And you know, he might save your life one day.
Yeah.
You know, at least you'll live to be annoyed by that individual down the road. You know?
Yeah. Yep.
And you know, I stayed clean. I met a girl who was in recovery at the time, and we had a little boy. And you know, we were together for a couple of years. And when we split up, she chose to date somebody not doing the right thing. She chose to put herself in this situation, and 6 months later she overdosed and died, and they found her body in a hotel with a needle in her arm. And my son was 15 months old when that happened. So I go and pick up my 15-month-old son. We make plans for the funeral. I still remember to this day picking out his little tuxedo, his little purple tie, and his shoes for his mom's funeral. And that is the exact nature of addiction. It doesn't care who you are, how old you are, what you're doing in your life. It doesn't matter. That one more could kill you.
Could be the last one. Just depends on which last one it would be. It's either you go out in recovery, you go out in casket. I mean, it's simple facts. Doesn't matter if you have a 15-month-old son. Doesn't matter what you have.
Yeah.
I mean, you never know when that's going to be your last time.
People ask, how could you, for those who don't know addiction or haven't experienced it, they ask, how could you put the drug before your kids? And addiction don't care.
Mm-mm.
Addiction does not care. They don't care that you had your first 3 kids taken away. It doesn't matter. An addict will use until they want to stop.
Yep. And
they have to want it.
Mm-hmm.
What we're doing here with this video, this is great, spreading the word and the message, but anybody watching, if you don't want it, if you're not ready, you're not ready.
Gotta want it. More than the dope.
More than the dope.
You gotta chase it like you chase that high,
And you gotta do a little bit of work. Those suggestions that we
Yeah.
talked about. You gotta do a little. It takes a effort every day, but not near as much of an effort as using those.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, not near that much effort.
No, that was a lot of work.
So, her name is Ashley. 2 weeks later, her stepdad overdosed and died too.
Really?
Yep. His name is Tim. Yep. And the ones left to plan the funeral was Ashley's mother, lost her husband and her daughter 2 weeks apart. It was actually the same officer on duty 2 weeks later that knocked on the door. And she said, what are you doing here? And he's like, I am so sorry to tell you this. Your husband died.
That's crazy.
And this was 4 years ago in April, and she's still grieving. Ashley's daughter is now about to start driving. Her oldest daughter. She's got a oldest son who's got really no father figure in his life. I try to reach out and spend time with him as much as I can. But that's the real consequences of addiction. That's the real consequences. My son's very fortunate. Just for today, his dad's in recovery. It's a just for today thing. If I go and use tomorrow, it's not because recovery doesn't work. It's because I did something wrong. I'm a basic textbook addict, like regular, nothing special addict, and I have to do the suggestions just like everyone laid out for me, or I'm done. Could be just like Ashley.
So let's talk a little bit about what you've done since you got back from your relapse. Like what's different now? What have you done different? What has worked for you in recovery? Some suggestions that you took. Tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Well, you and I came back right about the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I just celebrated 3 years. You'll be celebrating this week.
Mm-hmm.
This time I completely surrendered. This time I surrendered my will and my life over to the God that I understand. And for those out there. Don't let the word God scare you. It's what you understand God to be, is the way I was taught.
For me, when I first got in here, because we have to admit it that the God thing kind of scares a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Higher power,
Yeah.
or good orderly direction.
A good old doorknob.
Yep.
A group of druggies.
Yeah.
You know, it could be just the meetings.
Your sponsor.
Your sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at first, you know, it could be whatever whatever you choose it to be. So I always say, you know, don't let that vengeful Catholic God scare you. And no offense to anyone who's Catholic, just that idea of what God is. And I decided to surrender this time. You know, all right, so, you know, the first time that we went to war with Germany in World War I in 1919, we signed a peace treaty in Paris, right? Or in Versailles, and we had an armistice between Germany. That was just a ceasefire. That means you're not going to shoot at us, we're not going to shoot at you. And it was just a ceasefire. Well, what happened 20 years later? We found ourselves at war with Germany for the second time.
Oh, I don't know too much of a history person.
All right, so we marched into Berlin and conquered the entire nation and rebuilt it from the ground up. And the purpose to that is to get the nation to completely surrender. And this trip through recovery, I'm like Germany in 1945. Completely blown apart, surrendered, no more fighting. I'm going to get a sponsor, okay? I already had a sponsor. I didn't use it. I'm going to get a sponsor and I'm going to start working steps. I'm going to go to meetings every day. I'm going to become of service, you know? And service means giving people rides. Be of service to your fellow man, you know, giving people rides. You know, I do a similar thing to this. You've been with me over to the men's halfway house.
Yep.
The local halfway house. That's something that fills the soul and gives me purpose. You know, because recovery is job or no job, business or no business, girlfriend, no girlfriend, kids or no kids. You know, it doesn't matter. Recovery is not about your feelings whatsoever, because I feel like getting high is a feeling.
It is.
So what recovery teaches us is to make result-based decisions, okay? Not feelings-based decisions. You know, I feel tired, I'm going to go to bed. That's a feeling-based decision. Nothing wrong with going to bed when you feel tired, but what happens if you feel like getting high?
That's where recovery steps in.
That's where recovery steps in, because you got to play the tape.
And knowing what to do. Like, if you feel that feeling, like, that's where, like, the support group, the sponsorship, that's where all that stuff comes in. Knowing where your next meeting is, if you feel that, you know, that's where the tools that recovery gives you, that's where they play.
Now let me ask you, have you ever been regularly going to meetings, engaging in your recovery, talking with other recovering addicts, and it felt like using? Oh. So what you're saying is the vaccine is to do the
We
work.
don't like using those words around here. No.
Oh, yeah. No, not that kind of vaccine.
No.
But the preventative maintenance, we'll say.
Yes,
the
it's preventative maintenance.
maintenance.
Exactly what it is.
So you don't get that.
Exactly.
That feeling.
You know, it's funny you say that, because, like, and I shared this in my story. It's like the end of last year, and something that you don't, you know, I have to give it to you. Through your running a business, you've still stayed and maintained your maintenance in recovery. You've still done exactly what you used to, you know? And it's something that I lacked last year. And because of that, it made me miserable. And like, to the point, like, it's almost like those feelings came back that we were at the verge of using.
Right.
But today it's different. You know, I still have the support group and stuff like that.
Right.
So I was holding on by a bare thread.
Okay, well, you know what? And that's the thing. We're gonna make mistakes. Like, I've done that before. I've already been there. I've suffered for you. I already understand completely. Now you're out here telling everybody else, hey, you don't listen. I already touched the stove. It's hot.
Yep.
I touched the stove. I yelled at the stove. I manipulated the stove. I tried to barter with the stove. It's hot. You know. So
I like that.
I've experienced it just like you have, and that's why this time, with you know, doing all this in business, I already have that past experience of knowing the stove's hot, you know, and I know that if I don't do the maintenance, I'm gonna feel like getting high. I'm gonna feel like getting high, and I don't want to give up this life. You know, I don't want to die. I'm not meant for a cage, dude. I can't do time standing on my head. You know, it's just not for me. You know, some cats like you know, they're comfortable in prison. You know, I like, you know, my bed. Yep. You know, my own shower,
your own refrigerator to go to.
Yeah, whatever you want.
Simple things. Yeah, it's weird.
You know, so I don't like sleeping next to 80 noisy fucking dudes. You know.
Yeah.
That's just for me. You know, so this time I got to do some things different, and the rewards have been so much bigger. There's of course, you know, like we start saving money because we're not blowing it all, you know, on using. You know, yeah, there's the business, and I could talk about, you know, the fucking toys and stuff like that. That's cool. Don't get me wrong, I like my toys, but the number one gift I got this round is purpose. I got something to fill my soul. I found something that makes me complete, to where I can go to bed by myself and thank God. Like I literally, the other night, I went to bed by myself and I said, man, thank you God for the ability to do this, to be a complete individual. Because I got a God-shaped hole that money doesn't fill, leads for the business doesn't fill, social life won't fill. Nothing will fill that hole except for purpose. And for me, that's where we talk, like for me, the higher power that I understand, he feeds me purpose. And you know, that's why when someone asks me to do something like, say, the Hope Shot, the answer is absolutely yes. Because I was given so much. Not that my story is that freaking important, but man, maybe there's somebody watching that might benefit from it.
Exactly. And that's the whole reason we're doing this. Trying to get perspectives on all areas, all facets of people, life, women, men, you know, because we all have a story, man, and it's inspiring, especially when we gone through death, relapse.
Right.
Doesn't matter, you know, because eventually it's going to be your day. Just don't quit. You know? Absolutely.
My hope is for the future. You know, I prayed at 11/59/2020 that this upcoming year, I prayed to the God I understand. Man, Lord, just let me have another year of sticking to the basics, of, you know, just doing the preventative maintenance. That's the rest of it's going to take care of itself. You know what I'm saying? And recovery's not all rainbows and, like, you know, it's not all fun.
Nope.
We have a lot of fun times. We get to travel. You and I have traveled. We've done some stuff. Hopefully when this, you know, COVID stuff is over, we can travel again.
That'd be nice.
We all miss that very much. We get to miss that today. You know, my hope for the future is just to maintain the basics. Everything else is going to take care of itself. You know, I just know that as long as I don't pick up, as long as I don't get high, as long as I don't put the drink or the drug in me, that I have a hope for the future. You know, whatever situation or feeling that I'm dealing with that I don't want to deal with, eventually it's going to pass.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you, Ray, for sharing your story on the Hope Shot, man.
Awesome.
Ray is such an awesome and inspiring dude, and I have to tell you this though. Coming back from when I met you, and I met you 10 years ago, you've definitely changed this time. A little bit less intimidating. You know what I mean? So this has been another episode of the Hope Shot. We hope you enjoyed our video. If you like this episode, give us a comment, give us a like, share, and make sure you hit that subscribe button, ring the bell. That way you don't miss a notification from us. And again, this has been your Hope Shot.